Hi, so this video we're going to learn how to actually use the machine and doing a simple seam, doing a back stitch, and then sewing a corner. So we're going to get started here by making sure that our machine is on normal settings. The first thing you're going to look at your machine is the two indicators that show the tension for your threading and for your needle. I have two. I have one here and I have one here. So I'm just doing very basic. We're just starting out, just cotton or polyester fabrics that don't stretch. So we're just going to keep it in the normal setting. Usually there's a line that shows what's normal. For mine it's 4, and then over here it shows the range from 3 to 5. So I'm just going to put mine at a 4 and just keep it at its normal settings. Then we're going to move over here to this side, and you're going to want to make sure that your machine shows that you have a 2.5 length in your stitch. That's just a very medium size basic stitch. You'll find another button that looks like a U-turn with an arrow on one side. That button is your back stitch button. This is how we tie a knot when we're doing a seam in our fabric. So you do a back stitch at the very beginning when you're starting your seam, and then you do one at the end. This is so the whole thing doesn't unravel. You also want to make sure you're just doing a straight seam. Mine on my machine is just 0, 0, so I have that marked in my machine, and it's just a straight line. So whatever knob you have on your machine, just make sure it's just a normal seam setting. So now we're going to get ready to sew our scrap fabric to show how to do a seam. When you're first starting out doing your seam, you're going to want to hold on to your two threads. The one from your top spool and the one from your bobbin. This is so when you start to do your first few stitches, the thread doesn't get sucked back up into the machine. So you always want to make sure you hold on to this. So here's our scrap piece of fabric here. And you have a couple of lines usually on the silver plate. This is the sewing guide. So this is how you can make sure that whatever you're sewing, if you just keep the edge along one of these lines, then you're always sewing straight. So this helps you make a straight seam. So I'm going to hold my threads. I'm going to line it up with one of those sewing lines. And then I'm going to move the big knob on the right hand side, the balancing wheel, towards me so that the needle goes down into the fabric. It's going to go all the way down. And then I'm going to put the foot down. And I'm going to do, I just usually pull the wheel forwards a couple of times just to start out. Then I push the back stitch button. Remember, that's the button that looks like a U-turn. So I'm going to push it down, push slowly on the pedal so it goes back a couple of stitches. Let go of the back stitch button, and now we're going to move forward. And I'm going to keep an eye on this line so that I make sure that my seam is straight. And pushing the pedal for your sewing machine is just like driving a car. The faster you push it down, the faster the needle is going to travel. And if you're a little unsure at first, you can go slowly until you get more comfortable. So now if we're going to make a corner in this piece, you're going to put the needle down. Remember, always pull the knob towards you. Lift the foot, and then all you do is just pivot the fabric and make sure it's lined up again so you have the straight seam. Put the foot down, and then you just start sewing again. Once you reach the end and you're saying, okay, that's the end of my seam, the foot goes down, you hit the back button, it goes back a couple of stitches, and I go forward a couple of stitches, and that's it. Now it's been tied off so it's not going to unravel, and you're just going to cut your strings. And there, we just created a corner seam. So we're going to show you now from a closer point of view. Don't forget to hold your threads. You want to make sure that it doesn't get sucked back into the machine when you start sewing. And sometimes if you turn over the fabric after you sew, you see a big knot in the back. That's usually because you did not hold your strings. So I'm going to hold them, line it up with our sewing guide. These lines indicate your seam allowance. It's the measurement from the needle to the line. But I'm just going to pick a line, so I'm going to pick this one right here. I'm going to put the needle into the fabric by pulling the knob towards me. put the foot down, do a couple of stitches, and do a back stitch by pushing the U-turn back button. Go forward. Once I've done a couple stitches, I can let go of the thread. I don't have to keep holding on to it. It's just to get started. So now I'm gonna stitch it, making sure I stay lined up with that line right there. Once I get close to where I think I'm gonna have to make a corner, I'm gonna put my needle into the fabric. Lift up the foot, pivot it. I'm still not quite there, so I'm just gonna put the foot down to my original position. Go forward, a couple stitches, turn it, that's about right, and then continue sewing. You can try to just force the fabric around a corner, but then you'll end up with a curve instead of a nice crisp corner. Now when I get to the end here, I'm gonna wanna make sure my needle's in the fabric. Push the back stitch, go back a couple stitches, forward a couple stitches. That ties it off so my stitching will not unravel. Lift the foot, pull out the fabric, making sure that the needle is up when you pull out the fabric or else you'll break your needle. And then you just cut your thread. And now we have a nice seam here on our scrap piece of fabric. And I could just use a pin to pull out the corner and you'd see it was a nice crisp corner there. And that's it.